This breaking news, I do want to bring in Josh Hasten, who is a Middle East correspondent for JNS, co-host of the JNS podcast Jerusalem Minute, and the host of the weekly radio program Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Radio Network. Josh, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I do want to start, of course, with this breaking news. What can you share with us as Israel and Hezbollah have traded heavy rocket fire?
Yeah, first of all, unfortunately, we just got word in the last hour that an Israeli serviceman, a soldier, was killed in one of the Hezbollah barrages this morning at about 5 o'clock in the morning. So Israel had high-level intelligence indicating that Hezbollah was going to attack at any moment and target central Israel as well as northern Israel in the center of the country. You were talking about high-level intelligence centers belonging to the military. So Israel preempted that by striking in southern Lebanon, firing about 1,000 rockets, missiles, targeting Hezbollah's operation there in southern Lebanon, buildings, weapons, and whatnot. And we did have between 200 and 300 rockets, missiles, and drones launched by the terrorist organization Hezbollah at us, but it could have been a lot worse if Israel did not preempt that strike. So that's what we know at this hour. And it's been quiet on the northern front the majority of the day ever since then. That was about 5 o'clock in the morning. Since then, it's been relatively quiet throughout Israel, and it remains to be seen what this evening or the next couple of days has in store for us if Hezbollah decides to strike again.
Josh, I do want to ask you, there have been preparations in Israel as Israel continues to anticipate Iran retaliating for the assassination of some of these top commanders. Oftentimes Iran does use its proxies, Hezbollah being one of them. Is this a way for Iran to use a proxy in order to retaliate against Israel, or does Israel still expect Iran itself directly to retaliate?
Yeah, we're expecting Iran to retaliate directly. Back in April, they launched over 300 missiles, rockets, and drones at us. We're anticipating them to strike again. But as you mentioned, yes, they often operate through these proxies, whether Hezbollah in Lebanon or Hamas is also a proxy of Iran. The Houthis, we've been struck by the Houthis as well. So Iran is the head of the octopus here. We have to remember that Iran, at the end of the day, their aim is not only to fire these ballistic missiles at Israel and drones, they are trying to develop nuclear weapons. They are on the fast track towards nuclear weapons. So even if tensions die down over the next couple of days, whether or not Iran decides to launch one of these Hezbollah-style attacks against us, missiles, drones, and whatnot, we have to remember their goal is the pursuit of nuclear weapons, not only to target Israel, but to target the Western world. The United States, they view as the great Satan. Israel is just the little Satan. So we have to remember this is a situation which affects all of humanity, and Israel, if necessary, will go alone against Iran. If we do not, hopefully we'll have support of the Western world, but if necessary, our prime minister has said that we will go alone and do what is necessary to keep the state of Israel safe.
You brought up the fact that Iran is on the fast track for nuclear power. And I wanted to ask you this is, do you think Israel will have a preemptive strike against Iran, specifically targeting perhaps those nuclear capabilities?
If we have the capability and there is no other choice, I think Israel will have to do so. I mean, we're talking about an existential threat. We're talking about Iran's goal of destroying our country, the one and only Jewish state in the world. So if necessary, again, we now have partners in the Middle East, and it's Iran is no less of a threat to places like Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia. These countries are also threatened by the Iranians, and I think that they would very much like to see Israel handle the situation. We'd love them to be on our side if it comes down to that. But again, if necessary, Israel will do what it has to do in order to prevent an Iranian nuclear strike, which would essentially destroy the state, God forbid. So we'll do what we have to do, all in due time. But we can't forget that that is Iran's main goal right now.
And all of this with the backdrop of the ongoing ceasefire talks happening today. When it relates to the ceasefire negotiations, Israel and Hamas still are very much far apart in those sticking points. Where does it stand right now? And is there a reality where a ceasefire could actually be agreed upon?
So, as you probably know, Hamas has rejected each and every offer that Israel's put on the table. And again, we're talking about a ceasefire, not an end to the war. The prime minister has laid out 3 conditions in order for Israel to stop the war. Number 1, Hamas has to go. Number 2, the return of the hostages. We must have our hostages brought back. Over 100 Israelis, men, women, children, and babies being held hostage in Gaza right now. They must be returned. And number 3, Gaza can no longer be a threat to the state of Israel. So until all those three things happen, there will not be an end to the war. In terms of a temporary ceasefire, the prime minister has made it clear that Israel must maintain a presence on the Philadelphia corridor, which is essentially the border between Gaza and Egypt. Just last week, Israel destroyed over 50 weapon smuggling tunnels, which were coming from Egypt into Gaza. We cannot have a situation where Hamas continues to rebuild its arsenal of weapons, its arsenal of rockets and missiles and targets the state of Israel. So yes, we're a long way off. Israel must maintain a presence in the Philadelphia corridor and in central Gaza in the Netzarim corridor. Again, this is for the long-term well-being of the state of Israel. We can't go back to October the 6th, where Hamas is able to cross over into Israel, launch rockets, kidnap our citizens. We can't go back to that.
And as you mentioned, Josh, Hamas rejecting all of these ceasefire negotiations and deals, and in fact, not really even attending any of these negotiations happening right now. It does seem like that is a long way off. Do you have any final thoughts in terms of, what we have seen so far today with the exchange between Israel and Hezbollah as Israel still continues to fight against Hamas? You mentioned the Houthi rebels. There are so many different factions to this war, to these conflicts. Is there anything that you're keeping a very particularly close eye on?
Yeah, I would just say that, as our prime minister has said, Israel's now on a war on 7 different fronts. 7 different fronts, whether it's Iran directly, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and other threats here in the Middle East. But we have to continue and win the war. That is the most important thing. We have to defeat Hamas, not only for the state of Israel, but for the entire Western world. We know that what happens here first, then spreads to the Western world. 9/11 is unfortunately the perfect example of that. Back in 2001, the end of 2000 rather, Yasser Arafat launched a war, the Second Intifada, a war against the Jewish state of Israel. And soon after that, you had 9/11. So whatever happens here doesn't stay here. And I think that your audience and the majority of Americans realize what we're dealing with. This is a battle of good versus evil, of light versus darkness. And Israel's on the side of good. Israel's on the side of light. And we'll continue as long as we have to. And it's taken a very, very long time. But we will continue to pursue all those who seek our destruction and all those who seek the destruction of our way of life. And that includes the Western world. So we'll keep at it. Our soldiers have the motivation. They are strong. They are brave, the men and women of the IDF protecting us 24/7, and we'll keep at it.
Josh, we do appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thank you so much.
And we continue to follow that breaking